At Charleston Harbor, a ruthless gang is about to learn why you never judge a book by its cover. When the notorious river rats target what they think is just another fat old fisherman, they're making the deadliest mistake of their lives. Mike. Big fish. Thompson isn't just the gentle giant who supplies half the restaurants in South Carolina. He's a former Delta Force commander with over 200 confirmed wetwork operations that will never see the light of day. His call sign was Poseidon, a ghost that struck from the depths and disappeared into the darkness. This isn't just another crime story. This is about how the most feared gang on the Eastern Seaboard learned that some predators never lose their teeth. When they came for his harbor, they didn't realize they were swimming into a trap set by a master of maritime warfare. What follows is the story of how one man turned a peaceful fishing port into a killing ground, using nothing but fishing boats, 3 decades of combat experience, and the tactical genius that made him a legend. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn painted Charleston Harbor in shades of gold and crimson as Mike Thompson's weathered fishing boat, the Silent Hunter, cut through the morning mist. At 6'4" and built like a bear, Mike moved with surprising grace across the deck, his experienced hands working the nets with practiced precision. 20 years of peaceful fishing hadn't softened the warrior's awareness that kept his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. "Morning, big fish," called out Jimmy Chen from his smaller vessel. "Looks like another scorcher today." Mike waved back, studying the young fisherman's boat with unconscious tactical assessment. Jimmy was the 3rd generation of Chens to fish these waters, and like most harbor regulars, he had no idea about Mike's past life. The morning routine was sacred to Mike. Up at 3 a.m., gear check, old habits die hard. Navigation systems test, modified with equipment that would raise eyebrows if anyone looked too closely, and out before first light. The harbor was quietest then, reminding him of pre-dawn operations from another life. Sarah Martinez's voice crackled over the radio, the harbor master already at her post. "What's your approach to Pier 4, Mike? Got some new boats moored there." "Since yesterday," Mike acknowledged with a grunt, but his mind was already cataloguing details. 3 new vessels, high-end speedboats out of place among the working fishing craft. Professional paint jobs, but subtle signs of modification. Reinforced hulls, extra fuel capacity, hidden compartments. Noticed them too, eh? Old Pete pulled his shrimp boat alongside. The Vietnam vet was one of the few who suspected there was more to Mike than fish stories. "Been watching them since they came in. Crew doesn't look like recreational boaters to me," Mike nodded, remembering satellite images of drug runners using similar craft off the Colombian coast. "Harbor's changing, Pete. Whole city's changing. Got some new investment group buying up waterfront property, offering cash way above market. Those who don't sell been having accidents." Pete's weathered face darkened. "Lost 3 good slips last month. Jimmy's dad's place got hit with health code violations nobody can explain." Mike's hands kept working the nets, but his mind was running threat assessments. The pattern was familiar. Territorial expansion, infrastructure acquisition, systematic intimidation. Classic organized crime methodology. The morning catch was good. Red snapper, grouper, and enough blue crab to keep his restaurant clients happy. But Mike's attention was on the harbor's rhythm, noting disruptions in the usual flow. New faces watching from the pier, trying too hard to look casual. A pattern of boat traffic that suggested surveillance. His radio crackled again. "Big fish. Got a moment?" Sarah's voice carried an edge of concern. "Need to talk about some new docking regulations. In person." "Copy that. Heading in." Mike began hauling in his nets, every movement efficient despite his size. 2 decades of peace hadn't dulled the instincts that made him legendary in the Delta Force. The harbor was his home now, his sanctuary. But sanctuary or not, He'd learned long ago that trouble eventually finds those who know how to handle it. As he guided the silent hunter back to port, Mike noticed Jimmy Chen being approached by two men in expensive suits, overdressed for the morning heat. The young fisherman's body language screamed discomfort. One suit placed a heavy hand on Jimmy's shoulder, a gesture that looked friendly but carried clear menace. Mike adjusted his course slightly, bringing his larger vessel close enough to cast a shadow over the scene. The suits looked up, meeting eyes that had seen too much combat to be intimidated. Something in that calm, measured gaze made them step back. "Everything okay there, Jimmy?" Mike's voice carried across the water, gentle but carrying an undertone. The suits clearly recognized professional courtesy between predators. "All good, big fish." Jimmy called back, but his relief was obvious as the suits retreated. Mike docked with practiced precision, his mind already shifting through options. The harbor was a community, a family of sorts. He'd chosen this life for its peace, its simplicity. But if trouble was coming, better it found him than his neighbors. Some skills you never lose, some instincts never fade. Sarah waited by her office, tension visible in her stance. Behind her, through the window, Mike could see the suits making calls, their frustration evident. The harbor's morning routine continued around them, nets cast and hauled, fish sorted and iced, boats coming and going in their eternal dance. But beneath that peaceful surface, something was stirring. Mike could feel it in his bones, the same way he used to sense an ambush coming in territories far from here. The harbor was about to change, and he might have to remember things he'd spent 20 years trying to forget. Sarah's office hadn't changed in the 15 years Mike had known her. Maps on the walls, radio equipment humming softly, the faint smell of coffee and sea salt. She closed the door behind them, checking twice. Old habits recognized old habits. They're not just buying property anymore, Mike. They're taking over shipping routes, dictating who can dock where. Yesterday, they threatened to audit Marco's licenses if he didn't give them exclusive rights to his deep-water moorings. Mike's mind flashed back to a briefing room in Kandahar. Different threats, same tactics. Control the supply lines. Control the territory. Tell me about the suits. Called themselves Harbor Development Associates. But one of them slipped. Mentioned something about the river rats. Sarah watched Mike's reaction carefully. "That name mean anything to you?" It did. 7 years ago, before choosing Charleston as his refuge, he'd done his research. The river rats controlled most of the illegal maritime traffic from Virginia to Florida. Their leader, Marcus, the Captain Romano, was ex-Navy, turned his military knowledge into a criminal empire. "How long have they been watching the harbor?" Mike asked, his voice carrying the quiet intensity that Sarah had only heard twice before. Both times, right before trouble hit the harbor hard. "About a month. Started with small things, registration checks, health inspections. Then the accidents began. Tommy's boat caught fire. James's kid got roughed up. Now these suits, making offers nobody can refuse." Mike closed his eyes, memories surfacing unbidden. Bogota, 2003. Another waterfront, another group thinking they could take whatever they wanted. His team had gone. In quiet, came out loud, 15 years of therapy teaching him to let go of the violence, to find peace in the gentle rhythm of fishing. "There's something else," Sarah hesitated. "They've been asking about you. Specific questions. Military records, background checks. Someone's digging." A ghost of a smile crossed Mike's face. Let them dig. His official records were clean. Honorable discharge, standard service. The real missions, the ones that earned him the call sign Poseidon, were buried so deep even Congress couldn't find them. "Remember that storm 3 years ago?" Sarah asked suddenly. "When you took the silent hunter out in conditions that would sink a destroyer, saved that family of 4 nobody else could reach?" Mike nodded. The Coast Guard had called it suicide. He'd called it Tuesday. That's why we need you, Mike. Not because of whatever you did before, but because you're the only one who's never backed down, never looked the other way. His phone buzzed. A text from an old number he never thought he'd see again. Check your secure email. River rats have history. Ajax, Marcus Chen, Jimmy's uncle. Also former Delta, now running a security consultation firm in Singapore. If he was reaching out, the situation was worse than it appeared. Mike's fingers brushed the hidden compartment in his watch, a habit from days when that compartment held something deadlier than fishing line. The harbor had given him peace, a chance to be something other than a weapon, but some skills you couldn't unlearn, some responsibilities you couldn't walk away from. They're not just taking over the harbor, Mike said finally. They're building something bigger. These accidents, the property acquisitions. It's groundwork for a major operation. Sarah nodded grimly. Question is, what are we going to do? About it. Mike stood, his large frame casting a shadow across her desk. First we watch, gather intel, identify players. Then he paused, remembering the weight of decisions that sent men into harm's way. Then we decide if this can be handled quietly or if I need to make some calls. What kind of calls? The kind that don't show up on phone records. Mike headed for the door, then stopped. Sarah, if things go sideways, there's a locker at Marina Storage, Unit 237. Inside is everything you need to know, everything you'd need to protect the harbor if I can't. She understood the implications. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Outside, the morning sun had burned away the mist, revealing a harbor going about its business, unaware of the currents stirring beneath the surface. Mike watched Jimmy Chen's boat heading out, remembered another young man in another port who died because someone thought they could take whatever they wanted. Not this time, not this harbor. Some wars you fight with guns and tactics, others you fight with patience and presence. But all wars, Mike knew, eventually come down to one thing: how much you're willing to risk to protect what matters. The afternoon sun beat down on Charleston Harbor as Mike reviewed Ajax's intel on his boat's secure system. The River Rats operation was bigger than anyone suspected. 30 ports compromised in 6 months, a maritime network stretching from Norfolk to Miami. Charleston wasn't just another target. It was meant to be their new headquarters. A commotion at Pier 6 drew his attention. 3 of the suits were inspecting Old Pete's shrimp boat, their aggressive posturing visible even from a distance. Mike's hands flexed unconsciously, muscle memory from years of close-quarter combat surfacing before he forced them still. "You're gonna want to see this, big fish," Jimmy's voice crackled over the private channel Mike had given him. "They're at Marco's place. Whole family's watching them tear it apart. Health inspection, they're calling it." Mike switched cameras. He'd installed discreet ones throughout the harbor months ago, another habit he couldn't break. The scene at Marco's fish market was ugly. 6 men, trying to look official, but moving with military precision. Not local muscle, professional operators. His secure phone buzzed again. Ajax's message was brief. Field commander identified, Viktor Kovalev, ex-Spetsnaz, wetwork specialist, body count in triple digits. A face from the past clicked into place. Mike had crossed paths with Kovalev once, in an operation that didn't officially exist. The Russian had been good enough to escape when his entire team went down. Now he was here, bringing war to Mike's harbor. Sarah's voice came over the radio, tension barely contained. "Mike, they're calling an emergency. Harbor Council meeting. Tonight. Mandatory attendance for all slip owners. Classic intimidation play. Gather everyone in one place. Make the threats public. Show of force disguised as bureaucracy." Mike had seen it before, used it himself in psychological operations. "Time?" he asked, already moving to his hidden locker. 7 p.m. Harbor office. A pause. "Mike, they specifically requested you attend, used your full name, including your old rank." They know. Of course they did. Kovalev would have recognized him, even 20 years later. The game was changing faster than he'd expected. The afternoon wore on, tension building like an approaching storm. Mike observed 4 more teams arrive, disguised as fishing crews but carrying themselves like combat units. They were setting up a perimeter, establishing dominant positions around the harbor. His phone lit up with messages from the community. Jimmy Chen reporting suspicious equipment being loaded into warehouses. Old Pete noting unusual boat movements, vessels running, patterns that looked like surveillance routes. Even the local kids were picking up on it, telling their parents about strangers, taking pictures of the harbor from unusual angles. Mike used his cover of checking nets to document everything. Each team's position, their rotation patterns, the subtle signs of communications gear hidden under civilian clothes. They were good, professional good, but he was better. 20 years of watching this harbor had taught him every shadow, every blind spot. At 6, he made a call he'd hoped to avoid. The number hadn't changed in 2 decades. Switchboard. Authorization Delta 79 Poseidon. A pause. Authentication. Required. Sharks hunt in deep water, but whales know the score. Authenticated. Stand by. Admiral Chen's voice was older, but still sharp. Been a long time, Commander. Sir, got a situation in Charleston. Victor Kovalev is running an operation. Scale suggests state-level backing, a sharp intake of breath. Confirmed sighting? Affirmative. Running point on a maritime takeover, multiple ports, professional teams. Looking like a strategic play, not just criminal enterprise. Your status? Mike watched another team setting up in the Harbor Masters. Tower. Compromised. They know who I am. Civilian casualties likely if this goes hot. Resources requested. The question carried weight. Asking for help meant coming back in, at least partially. End of the quiet life. Reactivation of Echo Team. Limited scope, specific mission. That's a heavy ask, Commander. Harbor's worth it, sir. A long pause. Authorization granted. Limited parameters. Echo Team will deploy on your command. Try to keep the collateral. Damage low this time. Understood, sir. One more thing. Need a favor from Naval Intelligence. Go ahead. Those fishing boat permits you've been sitting on for Charleston Harbor, approve them all. Tonight. Make it loud, make it official. Time to show these boys what they're really up against. Mike ended the call and looked out over his harbor. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of blood red. In 2 hours, Kovalev would try to take everything Mike had spent 20 years protecting, but he'd forgotten the first rule of hunting. Always know what's hunting you. The Harbor Council meeting wouldn't go the way they planned. Mike allowed himself a small smile as he checked his watch. Echo Team would be in position by dawn. Time to remind everyone why they used to call him Poseidon. The Harbor Council meeting was a masterclass in intimidation. 40 boat owners crowded into the harbor office, watching as Kovalev's men positioned themselves strategically around the room. Mike sat at the back, playing his role of the simple fisherman, while cataloging weapons bulging under expensive jackets. Charleston Harbor is entering a new era, the lead suit announced. All corporate smoothness. Harbor Development Associates is prepared to offer generous compensation for all existing permits and properties. Old Pete stood up, defiant despite his age. And if we don't want to sell, the suit's smile didn't reach his eyes. Unfortunately, recent safety inspections have revealed numerous violations. Operating costs under new regulations would be prohibitive. Mike watched Jimmy Chen's father grip his chair, knuckles white. 3 generations of their family had fished these waters. Now they were being erased by bureaucratic terrorism. The tension snapped when one of Kovalev's men grabbed Sarah's arm as she tried to access harbor records. Before anyone could react, Mike moved. 2 decades of peace vanished in an instant. His movement was economical, almost gentle. One moment the thug was standing, the next he was on the ground, arm bent at. an angle nature never intended. The room froze. "My apologies," Mike said softly, helping Sarah step away. "Old reflexes. Sometimes I forget my own strength." Kovalev emerged from the shadows, applauding slowly. "Impressive, Commander Thompson. Or do you prefer Poseidon? Your reputation in close-quarter combat was not exaggerated." The room's atmosphere shifted. Harbor folks stared at Mike, seeing their gentle giant fisherman in a new light. "You have 12 hours, Kovalev continued. "Sell willingly, or we handle things differently. Perhaps we start with young Jimmy's boat. Accidents happen so easily at sea," Mike's voice carried across the suddenly silent room. "Touch any boat in this harbor, and what happened in Sevastopol will feel like a training exercise." Kovalev's face tightened. The operation Mike had just referenced was highly classified, a reminder that secrets went both ways. 24 hours, Mike counted. "Clear the harbor, forget Charleston exists, and we pretend this never happened. Otherwise—" He smiled, the expression carrying decades of combat experience. "Otherwise, I stop being retired." The meeting dissolved into tense murmurs. As people filed out, Mike noticed Sarah's questioning look. The harbor master had known he was military, but not the extent of his background. "Poseidon," she whispered. "Long story. Involves a submarine, 3 Russian oligarchs, and a very surprised SEAL team." His humor faded. "Sarah, get everyone off the water tomorrow. All boats stay docked. They won't back down, will they?" Mike watched Kovalev's teams dispersing into the night, already moving with tactical purpose. "No, which means tomorrow I show them why some legends are better left alone." His phone vibrated. Ajax's update. Echo team was in position, hidden among the cargo ships offshore. The pieces were set. Tomorrow, the harbor would become a battlefield. But first, Mike had to make sure his community understood what was coming. They weren't just fishermen anymore. They were about to become part of a war even his old commanding officers thought was long over. "Time to remember who we really are," he muttered, heading toward his boat. The silent hunter waited in the darkness, ready for one more mission. By dawn, the river rats would learn why you never threaten a Delta Force commander's home, no matter how long he's been fishing. The midnight harbor was never truly quiet. Waves lapping against hulls, rigging clanking in the breeze, the distant hum of cargo ships. But tonight, different sounds caught Mike's trained ear. Tactical radio chatter, the soft thud of combat. Boots on wooden docks, the distinctive click of weapons being checked. Inside the silent hunter's cabin, Mike activated systems that no fishing boat should have. Satellite feeds came online, showing thermal images of Kovalev's teams taking positions throughout the harbor. 12 men on the North Pier. Another team by the fuel depot. Snipers being positioned on warehouse roofs. They weren't waiting 24 hours. His secure phone lit up with a message from Jimmy Chen. "Uncle says packages delivered. Guest rooms ready. Code confirming Echo team had established their safe houses." Mike's hands moved over familiar equipment hidden beneath his boat's innocent exterior. Each piece brought back memories. Missions in waters far from here. Operations that had earned him both his reputation and his nightmares. A soft splash caught his attention. Someone was in the water, using professional diving gear. The harbor's security cameras, modified with military-grade software, showed 4 more dive teams approaching key vessels. "They're targeting our boats," Sarah's voice whispered through his earpiece. "Setting charges, looks like timer detonators." "How many families still on their boats?" Mike asked, already moving. "At least 6. Marco's got his kids aboard, Pete's grandson too." Mike's decision was instant. "Initiate Harbor Protocol 7. Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible. They'd developed emergency protocols over the years, preparation Mike had insisted on. 7 was the most extreme, total harbor lockdown. Across the water, Hidden systems hummed to life. Underwater nets deployed silently. Electronic signals scrambled communications. Every escape route was suddenly blocked by malfunctioning equipment. Echo team, green light. Mike transmitted on a frequency that hadn't been used in 2 decades. Rules of engagement: protect civilians, contain threat, minimal collateral damage. He could already see his old unit moving, shadows detaching from shadows, taking position with the precision that had made them legendary. The river rats thought they were hunting fish. They were about to face sharks. Mike's phone buzzed one final time. Admiral Chen's message was brief. Naval intelligence confirms Russian backing. Full authorization granted. Good hunting, Poseidon. The giant fisherman stood in his cabin, looking out over the harbor he'd protected for 20 years. He'd tried to leave the violence behind, tried to become something gentler, but some skills couldn't be forgotten, some duties never ended. His hands moved through familiar checks, weapon systems, body armor hidden beneath his fishing vest, communications, gear disguised as ordinary equipment. Each movement was practiced, perfect, the muscle memory of countless missions flooding back. "Sarah," he transmitted softly, "get on the harbor emergency channel. Tell everyone to stay inside, below decks. Things are about to get loud." "What about you?" Mike watched Kovalev's men approaching the Chen family's boat, where Jimmy's young sister was sleeping. "I'm done hiding. Time to remind these people why they used to fear the water." He stepped out onto his deck, his large frame silhouetted against the harbor lights. Let them see him. Let them remember this moment. Echo team. Weapons free. Hunts on. Across the harbor, 12 of the deadliest operators ever to serve started moving. The night was about to become very interesting for anyone who thought they could threaten Mike Thompson's home. The first explosion lit up the northern pier, but it wasn't from the river rats charges. Echo team had just announced their presence. The war for Charleston Harbor had begun. The first sign that the river rats had severely miscalculated came when their dive teams started disappearing. One by one, silent shapes emerged from the dark water, dragging black-clad figures into the depths. Each extraction was precise, professional, leaving nothing but ripples. "Manta, 4 tangos neutralized," a voice whispered in Mike's earpiece. Jack "Manta" Rodriguez, Echo Team's water ops specialist, hadn't lost his touch. 20 years ago, he'd earned his call sign by taking out an entire cartel submarine crew without surfacing. Tonight, he was teaching the river rats why some waters were better left unexplored. "Confirmed," Mike responded, watching thermal signatures blink out on his display. "Ghost status, in position." "Maria, ghost." Hernandez's voice was cold as Arctic water. Echo Team's sniper had taken up residence in a crane overlooking the harbor. Her Barrett 50 cal, disguised as maintenance equipment, could shut down any escape attempt through the harbor mouth. The river rats' perimeter teams were getting nervous. Their dive teams had gone dark, radio calls unanswered. Professional operators knew when something was wrong. A shadow detached itself from a stack of containers, moving with liquid grace. David Wraith Chen, Jimmy's other uncle and Echo Team's infiltration expert, had already bypassed their security and was moving among them like a lethal phantom. 6 charges located and disarmed, Wraith reported. They brought enough explosives to sink half the harbor. Getting sloppy, though, using commercial timers, amateur hour. Mike watched Kovalev directing his men to investigate the silence. The Russian was good, adapting quickly, tightening his formations, but he didn't know he was already surrounded. "Hammer, you're up." Mike's command activated the team's heavy weapons specialist. Marcus "Hammer" Jackson had spent the last hour setting up kill zones throughout the harbor. Each escape route was now covered by carefully concealed automated systems. "Music's ready, boss," Hammer responded. "Just say when." The fourth member of Echo Team made her presence known as the River Rats. Communications suddenly failed. Lisa. Pixel Martinez, their cyber warfare expert, had been dismantling their tactical network piece by piece. They're running on emergency frequencies now, Pixel reported from her position in the harbor master's office. Encrypted, but won't take long to crack. These boys bought their tech from the lowest bidder. Mike's boat drifted silently toward the center of the harbor. Each team member was in position, each angle covered. They'd run operations like this from the Arctic to the Amazon, but tonight was different. Tonight they were protecting home. Target approaching your position, Ghost warned. Kovalev's leading a team straight to you. Looks like he wants to handle the big fish himself, Mike smiled in the darkness. Echo Team, execute Harbor Protocol 9. Let's remind them why they used to call us the Water Devils. The harbor erupted in coordinated chaos. Hammer's systems activated, cutting off strategic sections with walls of fire and smoke. Wraith moved through the confusion like a vengeful spirit, disabling key operators with terrifying efficiency. Underwater, Manta's team was herding the remaining divers into carefully prepared nets. Above, Ghost's position provided overwatch, her scope tracking anyone who tried to regroup. Multiple targets breaking formation, Pixel reported. They're trying to reach their escape vehicles, switching to thermal imaging. Wait, something's wrong. Their engine control units are all broadcasting malfunction codes. Amazing how sensitive modern boats are to software updates, Mike commented mildly. The River Rats were learning the hard way that every piece of electronics in the harbor had been compromised months ago. Kovalev's voice cut through their secure channel. Pixel had given them access to his communications. All units, fall back to secondary positions. This is not just one operator. We are facing a full tactical team. Should we correct his math? Wraith asked, his voice carrying a hint of amusement as he disabled another river rat with surgical precision. Let him keep guessing, Mike replied. Ghost, paint the picture. The Barrett spoke once, the sound masked by harbor noise, a warning shot that turned the water to spray inches from Kovalev's command boat. Sir, Manta reported, all dive teams neutralized, harbor waters secured. Hammer, all escape routes locked down. They're in the box. Pixel, their communications are ours. No calls getting out. Wraith, 15 operators disabled. The rest are bunching up, getting sloppy. Ghost, crosshairs on Kovalev. Say the word. Mike looked out over his harbor, now transformed into a tactical playground where Echo Team reigned supreme. The River Rats had wanted a war. Instead, they'd walked into an ambush 20 years in the making. All units, prepare for final phase. Time to show them why you don't threaten a Delta Force commander's home port. Kovalev's response was immediate and brutal. Realizing he was trapped, the Russian commander switched to scorched earth tactics. Incendiary rounds lit up the night, targeting fuel lines and storage tanks. He's trying to burn the harbor, Ghost reported, tracking targets through her scope. Multiple teams deploying thermite charges. Mike's voice remained calm. Hammer Contingency Alpha. Already on it, boss. Beneath the harbor, hidden systems rumbled to life. Suddenly, high-pressure water cannons emerged from concealed positions, their spray creating a defensive barrier around critical infrastructure. You've been busy, Poseidon. Kovalev's voice crackled through their commandeered communications. 20 years of preparation. Impressive. You have no idea, Mike responded, activating another system. Across the harbor, powerful underwater, speakers began emitting a low-frequency pulse. The River Rats dive teams, those still conscious, found their specialized equipment malfunctioning. Sir, Pixel called, detecting multiple incoming vessels, high speed running dark. Reinforcements, Wraith confirmed from his shadow position. 3 boats, heavily armed. Looks like their insurance policy. Mike had expected this. Ghost, light them up. The Barrett spoke 3 times. Each shot struck precisely where planned, engine blocks disabled, but crews unharmed. The boats drifted helplessly, caught in the harbor's hidden current control systems. They're splitting into smaller teams, Manta reported from the water. 6 groups, moving building to building, using civilian structures for cover. This was the moment Mike had prepared for. Sarah, execute Community Protocol 3. Across the harbor, lights began going out in specific patterns. Windows and doors that had been reinforced over years of quiet preparation sealed automatically. Each building became a hardened position, but not in the way Kovalev's men expected. They're trapped, Wraith observed, with professional admiration. Each building is now a separate containment zone. The river rats discovered this the hard way. Teams that entered buildings found themselves sealed in, communications blocked by specialized shielding Mike had installed years ago. The harbor wasn't just defending itself, it was systematically isolating and neutralizing threats. "Boss," Hammer called urgently, "got movement at Marco's fish market. They're holding his family hostage." Mike's expression hardened. "Ghost, you have the shot." "Negative. Too many civilians. They're using the kids as shields." "Wraith, I can get inside, but it'll take time. They've got it locked down tight." Mike watched the thermal signatures moving inside Marco's building. 20 years of peace had taught him patience, but seeing children threatened brought back the cold clarity of combat. "Pixel, access the market systems." "Sir, you installed the special modifications." "Marco's anniversary present last year. His wife thought it was just a security upgrade." Inside the fish market, the river rats suddenly found their tactical advantage evaporating. The temperature plummeted as hidden cooling systems activated at full power. Specialized vents released a gentle sedative gas, disguised by the normal fish market smells. "Like I said," Mike transmitted to Kovalev, 20 years of preparation. The Russian commander's response was to order his remaining forces to converge on Mike's position. The silent hunter had become their primary target. "They're coming for you, boss," Ghost warned. "Count 30 plus, all armed." "Good." Mike's voice carried the calm confidence that had made him a legend. "Echo Team, execute Harbor Protocol Final. Show them why we were the best." Around the harbor, years of hidden preparations revealed themselves. Every shadow concealed a trap. Every approach held a surprise. The river rats found themselves facing an opponent who had turned an entire harbor into a weapon. "Remember," Mike transmitted to his team, "these people threatened our home, our community, but we're not here for revenge." "Just justice," Manta finished the old team motto. The harbor had become a battlefield, but one where civilians were safely protected, where every action was calculated to neutralize rather than destroy. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy, it was about protecting a way of life. "Sir," Sarah's voice carried a note of warning. "Coast Guard's picking up the disturbance. They're 15 minutes out." Mike checked his watch. "Plenty of time. Echo Team, let's wrap this up. Show them what happens when you threaten the wrong harbor." The night was about to get very educational for the river rats. The silent hunter's deck transformed as Mike activated systems hidden beneath innocent-looking fishing equipment. Weapon mounts emerged from behind false panels. Surveillance gear rose from compartments disguised as bait wells. 2 decades of preparation revealed in moments. Contact teams approaching from all sides, Ghost reported. "They're using the fishing boats as cover. Manta, status on underwater defenses. Nets fully deployed, boss. They try to go under, they'll get tangled. Trying to go through." A series of muffled splashes punctuated his words. "Well, let's just say the local shark population got some new playmates." Wraith's voice cut in, tense. "Situation at Marco's deteriorating. Sedative gas only partially effective. They're getting desperate." Mike watched the thermal readings. The river rats inside were showing signs of confusion, but 3 remained combat effective, and they still had hostages. Pixel, access Marco's cold storage controls. Sir, that could be dangerous for the civilians. Marco's freezer has a false back wall. Built it myself last summer. His family knows where to go when they hear the signal. Understanding dawned in Pixel's voice. The birthday party setup. Exactly. Inside the fish market, Marco's wife suddenly started singing Happy Birthday. The predetermined signal. In the confusion, the family slipped through a hidden panel while the river rats were distracted by rapidly dropping temperatures and screaming alarms. Family clear, Wraith confirmed. Hostage situation neutralized. Mike allowed himself a small smile. Hammer, they're all yours. The fish market's sprinkler system activated, but it wasn't water that sprayed down. A specialized polymer rapidly hardened in the freezing temperature, effectively immobilizing the remaining hostage-takers. Kovalev's getting desperate, Ghost warned. He's ordered his men to target civilian boats. They're setting charges again. Not happening. Mike's fingers flew over his console. Pixel, initiate harbor lock. Across the water, every boat's electronic. Systems suddenly activated, motors started, lines released automatically. But instead of chaos, a carefully choreographed dance began. Each vessel moved to predetermined safe positions, controlled by systems Mike had quietly installed over years of maintenance work. Beautiful, Hammer breathed, watching the harbor reorganize itself. Like a deadly ballet, the river rats found themselves increasingly exposed as their cover systematically removed itself. Ghost's Barrett spoke repeatedly, disabling weapons with surgical precision. Sir, Manta called, got something interesting down here. They brought a mini-sub, military grade, Russian markings. Mike's expression hardened. This confirmed the state-level backing. Can you access its systems? Already done. You'll want to see what's on its computers. This isn't just about taking the harbor. They're setting up a whole network. Weapons, drugs, human trafficking. Charleston was supposed to be their command center. Download everything, Admiral Chen. We'll want to see it. Kovalev's voice crackled through their comms again, strain showing through his professional demeanor. You've made your point, Poseidon. Perhaps we can negotiate. Negotiate? Mike's voice carried decades of command authority. You threatened children, tried to take people's homes. There's nothing to negotiate. The Russian commander's response was cut off as Pixel completely shut down their remaining communications. The river rats were now deaf, blind, and running out of options. 10 minutes until Coast Guard arrival. Sarah updated. Time to end this, Mike decided. Echo Team, execute Harbor Protocol Omega. Around the harbor, hidden lights suddenly blazed to life, eliminating every shadow. Concealed speakers began broadcasting a disorienting frequency. Decades of special operations experience had taught them how to overwhelm professional operators without lethal force. They're breaking, Ghost reported. 3 teams trying to surrender. Rest are falling back to Kovalev's position. Mike watched the thermal signatures converging on the harbor's north end. Everything was moving according to plan. The river rats thought they were retreating to a defensible position. Instead, they were walking into Echo Team's final trap. Remember New Orleans, Mike transmitted to his team. The reference brought immediate understanding. They'd run a similar operation, there turning an enemy's retreat into a systematic capture. Just like old times, Wraith's voice carried a predator's anticipation. The harbor had become more than a battlefield. It was a demonstration of why some legends are best left undisturbed. Echo Team hadn't just prepared defenses. They'd created a tactical environment where every piece of infrastructure could become a weapon. 5 minutes, Sarah warned. Mike nodded. Plenty of time. Let's show them why they call it Echo Team. When we strike, the sound never really goes away. Kovalev had gathered his remaining forces at the harbor's industrial loading zone, transforming the area into a makeshift fortress. Shipping containers formed barriers, cranes provided elevated positions, and the maze of equipment offered countless defensive angles. "He's not running," Ghost observed through her scope. "Setting up for a last stand." "No," Mike corrected, studying the thermal signatures. "He's buying time. Pixel, check for deep water transmissions." A moment later, Pixel's voice carried newfound urgency. "Got it. They've got a backup team approaching. Heavy assault craft coming in below radar, reading weapon signatures that shouldn't be on civilian vessels. Numbers? 3 boats. Estimate 20 operators per vessel. These aren't street thugs, boss. Gear readings suggest Spetsnaz equipment." Mike's mind raced through calculations. Professional Russian operators changed everything. Echo Team was the best, but even they had limits. 4 minutes until Coast Guard. "Arrival," Sarah reminded them. "Won't matter," Manta reported from the water. "These new boats are carrying enough firepower to handle a small navy. Coast Guard shows up. It'll be a bloodbath." Mike watched Kovalev directing his men with renewed confidence. The Russian commander had planned this perfectly. Delay until reinforcements arrived, then turn the harbor into a war zone. "Ghost, time to move. Your position will be compromised when they arrive." "Already shifting, boss. But I'm losing clean. Lines of sight. Wraith status of the civilian areas? All secured. Harbor residents are in the reinforced safe zones we prepared. But these new guys, they'll have equipment that can breach our defenses." Mike's voice remained steady despite the escalating threat. "Hammer, tell me you brought the special packages." "Full loadout, boss. But using them will leave evidence we can't explain to the authorities." The weight of command settled on Mike's shoulders. They could handle this quietly and risk civilian casualties, or break out the classified equipment and face uncomfortable questions later. In the distance, the faint sound of high-performance engines carried across the water. The Russian reinforcements were getting close. New plan, Mike decided. "Pixel, initiate Harbor Protocol Leviathan." There was a moment of stunned silence on the team channel. Leviathan was their ultimate contingency, one they'd hoped never to use. "Sir?" Sarah's voice shook slightly. "That'll shut down everything. The whole harbor goes dark." "Exactly." Mike's fingers flew across his console, activating systems that had lain dormant for years. "Hammer, deploy countermeasures. Ghost, switch to thermal targeting. Manta, get your team ready for underwater interference." Across the harbor, lights began failing systematically. Not just normal power. Every electronic system, every radio frequency, every modern piece of equipment started going dark. 2 decades of installing specialized EMP shielding on critical infrastructure was about to pay off. "Incoming boats are 1 minute out," Pixel reported. "Their electronics are still hot." Not for long. Mike watched his tactical display as the harbor transformed. Echo Team, sound off for Leviathan protocols. Ghost repositioned and shielded. Wraith, civilians secured in hardened locations. Hammer, countermeasures active and ready. Manta, dive team in position. Pixel, systems locked down and protected. Mike took a deep breath, remembering the last time they'd used this protocol. "Sarah, kill the harbor power, all of it." The industrial zone plunged into total darkness. Kovalev's men, professional as they were, couldn't hide their surprise. Even their tactical lights and night vision suddenly failed as specialized jammers activated. The Russian reinforcement boats roared into the harbor, their advanced equipment useless against the electromagnetic blackout. They'd expected to find a tactical battle. Instead, they were entering a dark zone where Echo Team had been practicing blind combat drills for years. "Remember your training," Mike transmitted on their hardened channel. "We own the dark. We own the water. Show them why." Echo Team never lost a night operation. Through his shielded optics, Mike watched the chaos unfold. The Russian operators were good, but they'd just lost every modern advantage they relied on. No thermal imaging, no radio coordination, no electronic warfare capabilities. Echo Team, however, had prepared for exactly this scenario. Every member knew their role in the darkness. Every position had been practiced until they could fight blind. 3 minutes until total harbor shutdown, Sarah warned. Perfect. Mike's voice carried the cold confidence that had made him a legend in Delta Force. Echo Team, weapons free. Welcome them to our darkness. The harbor was about to teach the Russians why some forces of nature are best left undisturbed. And why? Poseidon was a name spoken with fear in certain classified briefings. The real battle for Charleston Harbor was about to begin. The Russian assault boats entered a harbor that had become an electromagnetic dead zone. Their advanced electronics died instantly, engines sputtering to a halt as specialized jammers overwhelmed their systems. In the sudden darkness, the sound of water became deafening. Multiple targets in the water, Manta reported, his voice barely a whisper. They're deploying combat divers, night operation protocol. Mike watched through ancient but reliable night vision gear, technology so old it was immune to modern interference. The Russian divers were moving with professional precision, but they were swimming into Manta's domain. "Welcome to my office," Manta transmitted. His team moved like sharks through the black water, engaging the Russian divers with brutal efficiency. No weapons fired. At these depths, sound carried too well. Instead, years of close-quarters combat training came into play. Above water, Kovalev's remaining forces were trying to adapt to the darkness. Their tactical lights cast betraying beams through the night, making them perfect targets. "Ghost! They're marking themselves," Mike observed. "Copy that." The Barretts spoke 3 times, each shot precisely destroying a light source. The psychological impact was immediate. The Russians stopped using illumination, but now they were truly blind. Wraith's voice came through their hardened comms. "Moving among them now. They're getting sloppy, falling back on standard Spetsnaz protocols." "How many?" Mike asked, guiding the silent hunter through the darkness. 20 plus from the boats, 15 with Kovalev. They're setting up defensive positions, but they don't know the terrain like we do. Mike had spent years memorizing every inch of this harbor. In the dark, that knowledge became a weapon. "Hammer, status on the industrial zone?" "Rigged and ready. They try to use those containers for cover. They're in for a surprise." The Russians were professionals, adapting quickly to the loss of technology. Hand signals, predetermined rally points, disciplined formations. But they were fighting on Echo Team's home ground against an enemy that had turned the environment itself into a weapon. "Movement on the East Pier," Ghost reported. "They're trying to flank your position." Mike smiled in the darkness. "Pixel, activate the pier defenses." Hidden systems whirred to life. Suddenly, the wooden planks of the pier began shifting, rotating on concealed pivots. The Russian flanking team found their footing betrayed, the very ground becoming unstable. "4 in the water," Manta reported with grim satisfaction. "We'll fish them out." Kovalev's voice carried across the water, shouting orders in Russian. He was reorganizing his forces, pulling them back into tighter formations. Smart move, but predictable. "They're bunching up," Wraith observed. "Standard counter-ambush tactics." "That's what we wanted," Mike confirmed. "Hammer?" "Charges set. Just say the word." The harbor had become a ghost story. Strange sounds in the darkness, enemies disappearing without trace, the environment itself seeming to come alive. Even hardened Spetsnaz operators were showing signs of strain. "Sir," Sarah's voice cut in. "Coast Guards holding position outside the harbor mouth. They're requesting situation report." Pixel, feeding them a loop of normal harbor activity. "Far as they can tell, we're having electrical problems. Nothing more." A burst of gunfire lit. Up the night, as one of the Russian teams lost discipline. The muzzle flashes were like camera bulbs, exposing their position. Ghost? Taking the shot. The Barrett spoke once. Equipment, not personnel. Echo Team's rules of engagement remained strict. Mike watched thermal signatures shifting through the harbor. The Russians were moving exactly as predicted, falling back to what they thought were defensible positions. "All units prepare for Phase 2, he ordered. They wanted this harbor. Let's show them why some waters are better left undisturbed. Across the harbor, Echo Team acknowledged. Each member knew their role in what was coming. They'd practiced this scenario countless times, turning darkness and confusion into weapons. Manta, clear the waters around the target zone. Wraith, herd them east. Ghost, prepare for illumination. Hammer, stand by for full deployment. Pixel, maintain the blackout. The Russians were about to learn why Echo Team's operations were still classified. Some tactics were too devastating for official records. 1 minute to Phase 2, Sarah warned. Mike's voice carried 2 decades of command experience. Echo Team, execute Harbor Protocol Tsunami. Show them what happens in the dark. The real nightmare was about to begin, and the Russians had no idea they'd helped set the stage for their own defeat. Protocol Tsunami began with sound, a deep, resonating hum that vibrated through the harbor's waters. The Russians froze, sensing something was wrong but unable to identify the threat. "All units execute," Mike commanded. "Underwater, powerful." Pumpers activated simultaneously. The harbor's water level began dropping in controlled sectors while rising dramatically in others. "What are they doing?" Kovalev's voice carried genuine confusion as his men reported the changing water levels. "Teaching them about tides," Manta replied with cold satisfaction. His team had already cleared the target zones. Now they watched as the Russian positions became compromised by the rising waters. The first trap sprung when a team of Spetsnaz operators found their defensive position flooding. As they moved to higher ground, Ghost's Barrett spoke twice. The bullets sparked off metal just inches from them. Another warning shot. "They're being herded," Wraith observed from his shadow. "On position, moving exactly where we want them." Mike watched the thermal signatures consolidating. The Russians were professional enough to maintain unit cohesion, but that discipline was working against them. They were gathering precisely where Echo Team had prepared their killing ground. Hammer, commence shake-up protocol, hidden vibration. Devices activated beneath the pier structures. The Russians found their footing becoming treacherous as the very ground seemed to turn against them. More men fell into the controlled waters. 10 tangos in the water, Manta reported. "Collecting them now. No casualties, but they won't be swimming again tonight." Kovalev showed why he was a commander, quickly adapting to the changing situation. "Fall back to the containers, form defensive lines." "Right on schedule," Mike transmitted. "Pixel, light them up." Suddenly, powerful lights blazed from concealed positions, creating a disorienting strobe effect. The Russians found themselves caught in orchestrated chaos, water levels shifting, ground vibrating, lights pulsing. Their night vision equipment, already compromised, now worked against them. "Ghost, you have your shots?" "Affirmative. Every weapon in my scope. Take them, non-lethal only." The Barrett spoke methodically. One by one, Russian weapons malfunctioned as precisely placed shots disabled firing mechanisms and scopes. The Spetsnaz operators found themselves systematically disarmed. "Sir," Wraith called urgently, "Kovalev's breaking away. 3-man team heading for the harbor master's office." Mike had expected this. "Sarah?" "Already in the backup command center. All sensitive materials secured. Pixel, execute office protocol." The harbor master's office transformed into another trap. As Kovalev's team breached the door, they found themselves facing automated defenses, non-lethal but highly effective. Deterrent systems activated, filling the space with incapacitating agents. "Target down," Pixel confirmed. Kovalev and his team are taking a little nap. The remaining Russians, now leaderless and disarmed, found themselves in an impossible position. Echo Team had turned the entire harbor into a weapon, using their own tactical reactions against them. Manta, status of the water teams, all hostile divers contained, waters secure. Ghost, no armed targets remaining. They're blind and boxed in. Wraith, moving among them now. They're done, boss, just need to admit it. Mike keyed his external speakers, voice carrying across the harbor in Russian. Your commander is down, your weapons are disabled, your support. Teams are captured. Surrender now, and this ends without bloodshed. The response was immediate. Professional soldiers knew when a position was untenable. Hands raised across the harbor as the Russians accepted their defeat. Echo Team, commence. Secure and contain. Coast Guard arrives in 5 minutes. I want this harbor looking like nothing more than a power failure when they get here. The team moved with practiced efficiency. Prisoners were secured, evidence was collected or disposed of, and systems were restored to normal operation. Years of drilling these protocols ensured nothing would remain to raise questions. Sir, Sarah called. Coast Guard reports they're entering the harbor. Mike watched the thermal signatures of his team disappearing into predetermined positions. The Russians would be found scattered across the harbor, victims of an apparent mass equipment malfunction during a failed criminal operation. No evidence of Echo Team's involvement would remain. Stand down, Echo Team. Mission accomplished. But as the harbor's lights slowly returned to normal, Mike knew this wasn't over. The Russians' presence indicated something bigger. An operation beyond mere criminal enterprise. This had been just the first wave. The real storm was still coming. The Coast Guard's arrival found a remarkably ordinary scene. Several boats experiencing electrical problems, some disoriented foreign nationals in the water, and a harbor running on backup power. Mike played his role perfectly, the simple fisherman, helping coordinate the emergency response. But in the harbour master's backup office, a different scene unfolded. Pixel worked through encrypted data recovered from the Russian mini-sub, while Echo Team assessed their prisoners. You need to see this, boss, Pixel called, her voice tense. These aren't just Russian mercenaries. They're part of something called Project Neptune. Mike studied the decoded files. His expression darkened with each page. Sarah, secure channel to Admiral Chen. Priority Alpha. The Admiral's response was immediate. Report. Sir, we've confirmed state-level involvement. Project Neptune appears to be a coordinated effort to establish military-grade forward operating bases disguised as civilian ports. Charleston's just one target. How many? Initial data suggests 12 harbors, all strategic choke points. They're building a shadow navy, sir, using criminal organizations as cover. Kovalev, now conscious and secured, laughed bitterly. You think you've stopped anything, Poseidon? We are just the advance team. The real force comes next. Ghost, Mike called. Check the long-range thermal scans. Already on it. Multiple signatures approaching from international waters, big ones. Cargo ship configurations, but the heat patterns don't match civilian vessels. The Admiral's voice carried new urgency. Timeline. 24 hours maximum, Pixel reported, still analyzing data. They're mounting a coordinated strike. All 12 harbors simultaneously. Charleston was meant to be their command center. Mike's mind raced through implications. A dozen strategic ports, taken in a single operation, could cripple Eastern Seaboard. Defenses, perfect preparation for a larger move. Your orders, sir? Mike asked, already knowing the answer. You've got 12 hours, Commander. After that, this goes official. Whatever you're going to do, do it quiet. Understood. Mike turned to his team. Echo Team, we're back on the clock. This isn't just about our harbor anymore. Sir, Manta called from his position, got something else. These waters aren't just strategically valuable. There's something else here they want, something in the deep channel. Pixel's analysis confirmed it. They've been mapping the harbor floor, looking for something specific, something old. The pieces clicked into place. Mike remembered rumors from his active duty days, a lost Cold War asset, something that had gone down in these waters decades ago. They're not just taking harbors, he realized. They're recovering something that could change the balance of power. Kovalev's smirk confirmed it. The Russian commander hadn't expected to be captured, but now he was enjoying watching them uncover the truth too late. 12 harbors, Mike mused. 12 pieces of a larger puzzle, and we're sitting on one of them. Orders? Ghost asked, her scope already scanning the approaching vessels. New mission, Echo Team. We're not just defending anymore, we're hunting. Whatever's down there, we find it first. The harbor had become more than a battlefield. It was now ground zero for an operation that could affect national security. And Echo Team had 12 hours to stop it. Pixel, coordinate with Naval Intelligence. Ghost, maintain overwatch. Manta, prep for deep water operation. Wraith, start interrogating our guests. Hammer, we're going to need every asset in place. Mike looked out over his harbor, knowing that somewhere in its depths lay a secret worth going to war over. The Russians had thought they were just taking a strategic port. Instead, they'd triggered an operation 20 years in the making. Time to remind them, he transmitted to his team, why they used to call us the ghosts of the deep. The first sign of betrayal came when Ghost's position took fire from an unexpected direction, inside the harbor's security perimeter. "Contact rear!" she transmitted, rolling away from her sniper nest as rounds impacted where she'd been seconds before. Friendly position compromised. Mike's tactical display showed the impossible. Security teams they'd vetted themselves were turning on defensive positions. Someone had infiltrated deeper than they'd imagined. Multiple security breaches, Pixel reported, her fingers flying over keyboards. Someone's accessing our secure channels from inside the harbormaster's main office. Sarah? Mike's call was met with static. Got movement, Wraith reported. Sarah's with 2 unknowns, heading for the deep water dock. They've got her at gunpoint. The harbormaster, their friend, their coordinator for 20 years, was being marched toward a waiting boat. Her face showed not fear, but grim determination. She's not a hostage, Mike realized, watching her body language. She's in command. CIA, Pixel confirmed, breaking through encrypted files. Deep cover. She's been here longer than you, boss, running her own operation. The betrayal stung, but Mike's mind was already calculating implications. If Sarah was CIA, and she was moving now, the Russians aren't looking for something down there, he transmitted to his team. They're trying to stop the CIA from retrieving it first. Sir, Manta called urgently, got active sonar contacts, multiple underwater vehicles moving in the deep channel. They're professional using the latest stealth tech. American tech, Pixel added. CIA assets. The harbor had become a 3-way battlefield. Russian special forces, CIA deep cover operatives, and Echo Team caught in the middle, but they still had one advantage. Sarah helped build our defenses, Mike reminded his team. She knows our protocols, our fallback positions, but she doesn't know about Contingency Omega. Understanding rippled through the team. Contingency Omega, the plan they'd created without Sarah's knowledge, designed for exactly this scenario. Ghost, switch to secondary positions. Manta, activate the backup. SonarNet. Wraith, disappear and observe. Hammer, prep the special packages. Pixel, initiate Ghost protocol on all systems. The harbor's defense grid suddenly shifted, changing to configurations Sarah had never seen. New weapons appeared in hidden positions. Different frequencies activated on their command net. Multiple targets converging on the deep channel, Ghost reported from her new position. Russians moving to intercept CIA teams. They're going to tear this harbor apart. Mike watched Sarah's boat heading toward a specific set of coordinates. Whatever was down there, both sides wanted it badly enough to risk exposure. All units, hold positions, he ordered. Let them show their hands first. The CIA boat stopped over the deep channel. Professional divers began deploying complex equipment, some kind of retrieval system. Sir, Pixel's voice carried surprise. Intercepted communications suggest it's not a weapon down there. It's a decoder, Cold War era, something called the Enigma Echo. The name hit Mike like a physical blow. The Enigma Echo, a mythical Soviet device capable of breaking any encryption, lost during a covert operation decades ago. If either side gets that decoder, Wraith began, they could decrypt every classified communication from the Cold War. To now, Mike finished, including the locations of every other lost asset. Sarah's voice suddenly cut through their comms. She'd found their backup frequency. Stay out of this, Mike. Some secrets need to stay buried. Others need to come to light. You don't know what's really at stake. Maybe not, Mike responded, watching Russian teams moving into attack positions. But I know what happens when three angry dogs fight over the same bone. The harbor gets torn apart. He switched to the team channel. Echo team, new mission. We don't let anyone reach that decoder. Not the Russians, not the CIA. Whatever's down there stays down there. The water was about to become very crowded, and Echo Team had to stop a war from starting in their harbor. The harbor's deep channel had become a powder keg. CIA divers were already in the water, their advanced equipment cutting through decades of silt. Russian teams moved into attack positions, their own recovery gear ready. And in the middle, Echo, team prepared to stop them both. Manta, what are we dealing with down there? Mike asked, studying sonar readings. It's a mess, boss. Channels narrow, visibility zero. CIA's using some kind of sonic mapping system. Russians have remote vehicles standing by. Lot of ways this could go wrong. Pixel, status of harbor defenses. Reconfigured and holding. Sarah knew most of our tricks, but not the ones we added last month. We've got override control of all critical systems. Mike watched thermal signatures gathering around the channel. 3 forces, each capable of destroying the harbor, all fighting for a device that could unravel decades of secrets. Ghost, how many shooters? CIA's got 2 sniper teams in position. Russians have 3, all using match-grade ammunition. They're not here to wound. The situation was deteriorating fast. Any firefight would bring official attention. They had to contain this quietly. Sir, Wraith's voice carried unusual tension. Got movement at the container yard. Local police responding to reports of suspicious activity. Civilians entering a potential war zone. Perfect. Hammer, initiate Harbor Protocol Delta, clear the area. Across the waterfront, carefully prepared emergency systems activated. Fire alarms, gas leak warnings, and security alerts created a calculated evacuation zone around the critical areas. Incoming, Ghost warned. Multiple boats approaching from sea. Russian reinforcements trying to look like fishing vessels. Mike's tactical display showed the new threats. The Russians were done being subtle. These weren't special forces, they were full combat units disguised as civilians. They're not here to retrieve anymore, Mike realized. They're here to make... Oh sure, nobody else does. CIA's changing positions, Wraith reported, moving to defensive posture. Sarah's coordinating some kind of fallback plan. The pieces clicked together in Mike's mind. She's not trying to recover the decoder, she's making sure it stays lost. Confirmed, Pixel added, breaking another encryption layer. CIA orders are specific. Deny retrieval to all parties. The harbor was about to become ground zero for a shadow war. 3 forces, 3 different missions. Retrieve, destroy, and protect. Echo Team, final positions, Mike ordered. Manta, get your dive team ready. Ghost, switch to anti-material rounds. Target their equipment, not personnel. Wraith, stay Ghost, stay close. Hammer, deploy countermeasures. Pixel, lock down every system. The Silent Hunter moved into its predetermined position. Its innocent fishing boat exterior, hiding enough firepower to handle a small war. Sir, Pixel called urgently, detecting multiple underwater signatures. Russian combat divers entering the channel from multiple points. CIA teams are responding, Manta confirmed. They're laying charges, planning to collapse the channel. If that happened, the resulting explosion would damage half the harbor. Decades of secrets might stay buried, but at what cost? New contact! Ghost's voice carried rare alarm. Fast boat approaching from the inlet. Multiple signatures. Sir, it's Ajax. Mike's old teammate had arrived, adding another player to the deadly game. But whose side was he on? All units hold positions, Mike commanded. Let's see how this plays out. The harbor had become a chessboard, each piece poised for violence. CIA teams with orders to destroy, Russians determined to retrieve, Echo team ready to protect, and now Ajax, the wild card, entering the game. 10 minutes until civilian area is clear, Hammer reported. Underwater charges are armed, Manta added. CIA's not bluffing. Russian combat teams in final attack positions, Ghost confirmed. Mike looked out over his harbor, knowing the next few minutes would determine not just its fate, but potentially the balance of global power. The Enigma Echo's secrets could expose decades of operations, compromise countless agents, reveal every hidden asset from the Cold War. Echo Team, switch to encrypted Channel Delta, he ordered. Execute Harbor Protocol Omega-3. Whatever happens next, we protect our home. The storm wasn't just gathering. It was about to break over Charleston Harbor with enough force to reshape the world. And Echo Team was the only thing standing between order and chaos. Weapons free, Mike commanded. But remember, this is our harbor. We decide who bleeds. Ajax's boat cut through the harbor waters with surgical precision, stopping exactly between the CIA and Russian positions. Mike watched his old teammate stand at the helm, noting the subtle signs of concealed body armor and weapons. All teams. Holding, Ghost reported. They're waiting to see what he does. Ajax's voice crackled across all frequencies. He wasn't bothering to hide. Attention all forces. This is a Homeland Security operation. Stand down immediately. Sarah's laugh carried across the water. Try again, old friend. Homeland wasn't even an agency when that decoder went down. You're here for someone else. Multiple underwater contacts, Manta cut in. Russian divers using the distraction. They're moving on the target. The CIA teams responded instantly, their own divers deploying to intercept. The harbor's dark waters became a battlefield as elite operators clashed in the depths. Ghost, you have shots on their support boats? Affirmative. But, sir, Ajax's team is setting up weapon positions. Professional gear, latest gen. Mike studied. The tactical display. Ajax wasn't acting like Homeland Security. His team's movements were too aggressive, too focused on the target zone. Pixel analysis. His communications are bouncing through multiple agencies. CIA, NSA, even some foreign signals. He's burning through cover identities like matches. Because he's not here officially, Mike realized. He's working for someone else. Someone who wants that decoder as much as the others. The situation exploded as Russian snipers opened fire on CIA positions. Sarah's teams responded with precise counterfire. Ajax's forces began advancing under cover of the chaos. Sir, Wraith called urgently, got movement in the container yard. They're bringing up heavy equipment, looking like demolition gear. They were done with subtle. If they couldn't retrieve the decoder, they'd destroy the entire channel. Manta, status underwater. It's a mess, boss. 3 different teams fighting in zero visibility. Somebody's going to hit those CIA charges. Mike made his decision. Echo Team, execute Harbor Protocol Omega-3. Protect the channel at all costs. Around the harbor, hidden systems activated. Powerful underwater nets deployed, trapping and separating the fighting dive teams. Specialized sonar pulses disrupted underwater communications and navigation systems. Topside is hot, Ghost reported as gunfire erupted between surface forces. Russians targeting CIA boats. Ajax's team moving. To flank. Hammer, contain the surface fight. Concealed devices activated, creating walls of fog between the combatants. Specialized sonic weapons disrupted targeting systems and communication equipment. "Sir," Pixel's voice carried sudden urgency. "Detecting multiple new signatures approaching. From sea, big ones." The tactical display showed 3 ships entering the harbor mouth. Their profile was civilian, but their movement was pure military precision. "Chinese vessels," Pixel confirmed, "using stolen credentials. They're here for the decoder too." The harbor had become a multinational battlefield. 4 separate forces, each willing to destroy everything to achieve their goal. "Echo Team, new parameters," Mike commanded. "We're not just protecting the harbor anymore. We're preventing an international incident." The silent hunter moved into attack position, its innocent exterior hiding enough firepower to handle multiple threats. "Ghost, disable their mobility. Manta, get those divers out of the water. Use whatever force necessary. Wraith, plant the charges. Hammer, prepare for full-spectrum denial." Ajax's voice cut through their channel. He'd found their frequency. "Stand down, Mike. You don't know what that decoder can reveal. Some secrets need to come to light. And others need to stay buried," Sarah countered, her CIA teams regrouping for another attack. The Russians were advancing from multiple angles. The Chinese ships were deploying their own special forces. Ajax's team was moving to seize control of key positions. "All teams, execute Poseidon protocol," Mike ordered. It was their last resort. A coordinated operation that would demonstrate why Echo Team's missions were still classified. The harbor was about to become a killing ground, but Mike had spent 20 years preparing for exactly this scenario. Every pier, every channel, every shadow concealed a surprise for anyone foolish, enough to threaten his home. "Sir," Manta reported from the depths, "found the decoder. You're not going to believe where they hid it." "Location? Right where no one would look. Inside old Pete's favorite fishing spot." Mike allowed himself a grim smile. Sometimes the best hiding place was in plain sight, but now that secret was about to turn Charleston Harbor into ground zero for an international shadow war. "Echo Team, weapons free. Show them why we're still the best." Charleston Harbor erupted into coordinated chaos as Echo Team executed the Poseidon protocol. Every trap, every system, every advantage they'd built over 20 years activated simultaneously. The Chinese vessels found their sophisticated electronics suddenly blind as electromagnetic pulses swept the harbor. Russian combat teams discovered their communications jammed by frequencies Mike had spent years perfecting. CIA units lost control of harbor systems they thought they understood. "Ghost, paint the targets," Mike commanded. The Barrett spoke methodically, each shot precisely disabling critical equipment, ship communications arrays, weapons systems, navigation gear. Ghost wasn't shooting to kill. She was systematically isolating and degrading each force's capabilities. "Multiple divers in the water," Manta reported, "all heading for old Pete's spot. Chinese teams are using some kind of advanced propulsion system. Hammer, underwater countermeasures. Hidden devices activated throughout the channel, releasing specialized chemicals into the water. The crystal-clear liquid appeared harmless, but it reacted with the advanced diving equipment, forcing the operators to surface or risk equipment failure." "Sir," Wraith called from his shadow position, "Ajax's team is splitting up. They're coordinating with someone else, getting readings I don't recognize." "British MI6, Pixel confirmed, breaking another layer of encryption. "They're here too. Ajax is working with multiple agencies." The harbor had become a battlefield for every major intelligence service on Earth, all fighting for a device that could unravel decades of carefully kept secrets. "Topside is chaos," Ghost reported as gunfire erupted between multiple forces. Russians engaging Chinese teams, CIA trying to hold the channel, Ajax's group moving to... Wait, something's wrong. Mike saw it too. The tactical patterns had shifted. What looked like chaos was actually... They're working together, he realized. All of them. This whole fight is choreographed. Sarah's voice cut through their channel. Finally figured it out, Mike. We needed this to look real. Needed you to activate all your systems, reveal all your defenses. The betrayal ran deeper than they'd imagined. Every agency had cooperated, coordinated their attacks, all to force Echo Team to expose their full capabilities. The decoder's not what they want, Mike transmitted to his team. They want our harbor defense protocols, the systems we've spent 20 years perfecting. Confirmed, Pixel reported, analyzing data streams. They're mapping everything, every response, every countermeasure. We've built the perfect harbor defense system, and they want to steal it. But Mike had prepared for even this. Echo Team, switch to Omega Protocol Final. Show them why you never reveal all your cards at once. The harbor's true defense grid activated. Systems they'd never registered, never tested, never revealed even to Sarah. The water itself seemed to come alive as decades of hidden preparations unveiled themselves. Specialized currents activated, creating powerful undertows that swept away dive teams. Electromagnetic fields shifted, destroying sensitive equipment. Sonic weapons operated at frequencies that turned the harbor into an impossible battleground for anyone except Echo Team. Multiple forces retreating, Ghost reported with satisfaction. Their equipment's failing systematically. Everything they brought is turning against them. Sir, Manta's voice carried urgency. Got eyes on the decoder. You're not going to believe this. Report. It's a fake. The real one. According to these readings, it's inside your boat. Has been for 20 years. Mike smiled grimly. Inside the one place they'd never look. Because I've been its guardian all along. The Silent Hunter's innocent exterior concealed more than weapons. For 2 decades, it had hidden the most sought-after intelligence device in history. Every agency had fallen for the deception, fighting over a decoy while the real prize sat. In plain sight, all units converging on our position, Ghost warned. They figured it out. Good. Mike's voice carried the cold confidence of absolute preparation. Echo Team, execute Harbor Protocol Ultimate. Show them why some secrets are better left alone. The harbor transformed one final time. Every system, every weapon, every advantage, focused on a single purpose, protecting the Silent Hunter. The water around Mike's boat became a killing ground of underwater defenses, electronic warfare, and environmental weapons. Chinese vessels are turning back, Pixel reported. Their systems are completely blind. Russian teams losing cohesion, Ghost added. Multiple forces withdrawing. CIA units going dark, Wraith confirmed. Sarah's pulling back. Ajax's voice cut through the chaos. Mike, you don't understand. That decoder, it can expose everything, every black op, every secret mission, every hidden agenda. The world needs to know. The world needs its secrets, Mike responded. Some things stay buried for a reason. The harbor had become a graveyard of advanced technology as every attempt to reach the Silent Hunter failed. Echo Team's defense protocols proved why they were still considered the best. Sir, Manta called from the depths, harbor's clear. All dive teams neutralized or withdrawn. Whatever they brought, it wasn't enough. Mike watched the various forces. Retreat, their carefully coordinated operation in shambles. They had revealed their hand, exposed their capabilities, and gained nothing. Ghost, maintain overwatch. Wraith, secure the perimeter. Hammer, reset the defenses. Pixel, start erasing their data. Manta, sweep the channel. The harbor gradually returned to normal as Echo Team systematically removed all evidence of the battle. But something had changed. The world's most powerful agencies now knew that Charleston Harbor contained more than just fish and boats. Think they'll be back? Ghost asked, her Barrett still covering potential threats. Maybe, Mike replied, watching the sun rise over his harbor. But next time, they'll remember why some waters are better left undisturbed. The silent hunter remained at its mooring, looking like nothing more than an old fishing boat. Its secret cargo would stay safe, protected by the most sophisticated harbor defense system ever created, and by a team that had never failed a mission. "Echo Team, stand down," Mike commanded. "The harbor is secure. Let them tell their stories about what happened here. Sometimes the legend is better protection than any weapon." The morning tide began washing away traces of the night's battle, but the message would spread through intelligence agencies worldwide. Charleston Harbor belonged to Echo Team, and some secrets would stay buried in its depths forever. A week after the battle, Charleston Harbor had returned to its normal rhythms. Fishing boats came and went, tourists wandered the docks, and the morning sun painted the water gold. On the surface, nothing had changed. Mike stood on the silent hunter's deck, watching old Pete teach Jimmy Chen's son how to check his nets. The harbor community had grown stronger, closer, in the wake of that night. They didn't know the full story, but they understood enough. Someone had tried to take their harbor, and Mike's team had stopped them. Interesting report from Naval Intelligence. Admiral Chen's voice came through Mike's secure line. "Every agency involved is claiming equipment malfunction, technical failures, training accidents." "Better than admitting they got outplayed by a fishing boat," Mike replied. "Speaking of which, that decoder, safe, where it's been for 20 years. Some secrets need guardians, sir." The Admiral's chuckle carried understanding. "Well, word's spreading. Charleston Harbor's becoming known as a place best avoided by certain organizations, though no one can quite explain why." Echo Team had dispersed back to their cover lives, but things were different now. Ghost had bought the old lighthouse, converting it into a photography studio with excellent lines of sight. Manta opened a diving school, his courses mysteriously popular with local law enforcement. Wraith acquired a warehouse, its storage units perfect for monitoring harbor traffic. Hammer's construction company won the contract for harbor maintenance, while Pixel's IT consultancy handled port security. "Think they learned their lesson?" Sarah's voice surprised him. She stood on the dock, no longer pretending to be just the harbor master. "You're still here. Someone needs to coordinate with the agencies, keep them from doing anything foolish." She smiled. "Besides, this harbor needs its guardian angels." Mike watched his team's positions light up on his tactical display. Each member alert, ready, integrated perfectly into harbor life while maintaining their watch. "The agencies are already talking about the harbor defense protocol," Sarah continued. "They don't understand how a bunch of retired operators turned a civilian port into an impregnable fortress. They want to replicate it. Let them try." Mike checked his boat's hidden systems. The decoder secure, the defenses active, the water itself turned into a weapon. Some things can't be copied. They're built through time, trust, and community. The morning sun caught the harbor's waters, making them glisten like armor. Beneath that peaceful surface lay the most sophisticated port defense system ever created, guarded by the deadliest team ever assembled, protecting secrets that could reshape the world. "Just another day of fishing?" Sarah asked. Mike smiled, watching his harbor come alive with the morning's activities. Just another day of keeping the waters calm. The silent hunter remained at its mooring, looking like nothing more than an old fishing boat. Its secret cargo would stay safe, protected by a team that had never lost a battle and a harbor that had become legend in certain classified circles. Some waters run deep, some secrets stay buried, and some harbors are better left in peace.